This is Duke University.
Many years ago, I had the misfortune of being involved in an explosion, and as a consequence, I got burned in about 70% of my body, and I spent the next almost 3 years in hospital. Having no skin creates opportunities for incredible pain, and then they start taking bandages off. That was kind of a daily torture, and I would try to convince them all along that the best thing to do was not to pull strongly on the bandages and make them very fast, but to do it slower. So if you imagine that you have like a time horizon, and the question over this time horizon, what would you want? Do you want high intensity of pain but for a short duration? Or would you rather have a longer duration but lower intensity? Right? Do you want to pull the bandage slower, or do you want to rip them off fast, one after the other? And I felt that the better approach would be to have lower intensity and longer treatment. And they felt that I was wrong, that the right way to do is to hold the bandages and rip it off, and hold the next one and rip it off. And of course, they won. I mean, there was no, I was trying to convince them, but there was no way to discuss it with them. So the question basically is, if you think about the painful experience that you have to give a patient, the question is, can you manage it differently so that it creates less pain? And when I got out of the hospital, I started doing research on exactly this question. So I would bring people to the lab, and I would hurt them in different profiles. So I would give them pain that went from low to high, or from high to low. I would give them longer durations of pain at lower intensity, shorter pains at higher intensity, and so on. And after giving people these painful experiences, I would ask them, how painful was this on a scale from 0 to 100? Or I would give them two of those and say, which one would you rather experience next? Which one is less painful? It turned out that my intuition was correct as a patient, that it was better to have a lower intensity and longer treatment, because we don't incorporate the duration as well into our estimations. If you take something and make it from 40 minutes to 80 minutes, it doesn't become twice as painful. But if you take something from one intensity to another intensity, you can easily make it twice. It's more painful in our memory. The nurses were really kind, amazing individuals. They really dedicated their life to the burn patients. I love them, and I think some of them loved me. At the same time, they were wrong, and they were inflicting too much pain on me, not because they were evil, but because they were just wrong. And the question is, how can somebody who works in the burn department for 15 years, doing this thing day in and day out, really not wanting to hurt their patient, how could they be wrong? How could it be that their understanding of the patient is not accurate? This realization of how the nurses were wrong made me want to explore other things that people are wrong at. Right? So medicine is one domain, but what about other domains that we might be wrong about? How we understand our eating habits and our preferences and the things we do and the decisions about savings and choices and what we like and what we don't like. It basically opened the whole domain for me through actually studying cognitive psychology of trying to figure out what are these deeply held beliefs that people have that are actually wrong. So what I usually do these days is I look at my own behavior. I look at the behavior of my friends and family and people around me. I look at people on the street, and I try to kind of observe and figure out what are people doing that I think is funny or ridiculous or wrong or irrational. And then I take that intuition into the lab and I say, well, is it really irrational or is it really not irrational? And what can we learn about this behavior and its causes?